Hi everyone, it's Paul, and this week I wrote about an experience that I had in May that has really changed how I look at the work I'm doing now. When I started out working on the streets, it was an amazing, wonderful, heart-driven, heart-forward experience for me. I really fell in love with this work. And I worked like a maniac at it, right? Not necessarily good or effectively or efficiently, but I was a maniac for this work. And I was happy doing what I was doing, which was basically working in direct services, not really challenging the system, knowing that things could be done better, but really thinking that my place as a newcomer was to just be there and do the work. When Wardo was killed, all of that changed. I got pissed off. And that being angry did change things. I created Second Grace. I started talking to people. I started reaching out and started writing about some of the things that I saw that were unfair or unjust, the lack of the sense of urgency, the real loss of this feeling that we could end homelessness. And I stayed mad, and I've stayed mad for too long. On May 2nd, I was invited to the Radical Compassion Conference hosted by the Immaculate Heart community. And I heard something there that changed me deeply. And I want to talk about that today. I want to start with some good news first. In advance of the official numbers being released in July, I have heard that we have succeeded in housing quite a number of people this year, and that is very exciting news to me. They're not permanently housed. They're in hotels, they're in different programs, but they are housed. They're off the streets. And this is really the beginning of getting people back, getting them back housed and getting them back into society. I'm very excited by this. That said, 200 people are still losing their housing every day in LA. That's 84,000 people a year enter the systems that are meant to manage our homeless crisis here. So what's happened is that these systems are constantly overwhelmed. And the systems that are set up cannot take that influx of people. The burnout is too high. The demand on the outreach teams is too high. The demand on the social workers is too high. The turnover is incredibly high. So what happens is we lose the trust of the people who we're trying to help. Every time they meet with somebody, it's a new face. Every time they call their social worker, it's a new social worker. These are things that are constantly problems, have been as long as I've been doing this work, and I've talked to people who talk about it for even longer, but it's worse now. And it is more difficult for us to move this forward. We're making a little success in clearing out the backlog, the 75,000 people who've been living on the streets already, but we're not doing anything yet to stem the flow of people entering homelessness. One of the great things about doing this work is you get to meet a lot of amazing people. And this panel was 3 amazing people. Father Greg Boyle, who Homeboy Industries, you might have heard of. You probably all know about Homeboy Industries, right? Sister Judy Vaughan, who was one of the founders of Alexandria House, which I didn't know about. She was amazing. And Sister Suzanne Jabro, who works at Border Compassion, does a lot of work along the border here in Southern California and in San Antonio, Texas. And each of them shared long stories about the amazing experiences they've had. A few things stuck out, and I wrote at length about this and quoted them, and I'm probably going to get these quotes wrong again because I hand wrote them in the first place, and now I'm going to be repeating them and paraphrasing them. So apologies if I mess these up too much. But one of the things that I really took away from Father Boyle, he said, we don't go to the margins to change things. We go to the margins and we get changed. And he talked about the importance of standing at the margins. And this is something I figured out right away, or I knew, or I understood that my life would be better if I continued to do this work. Simply that being there with people on the edge is where I felt the most comfortable. Those mornings handing out towels on rainy days in San Francisco to people getting showers, I felt more at home than I had felt in any job I'd had until then. And I didn't realize that it would change me. And I thought I could make a difference. And I don't really know if I made a difference. I don't know those people well enough to know if they stayed housed, got housed, if their lives were noticeably changed by the work that I was doing, other than in the moment that we connected as human beings. And I don't want to downplay that. That's really what I think is the important part, is that we talked and we met and we got to know each other. And that my understanding, my ability to have compassion, my ability to do this work just grew exponentially from each relationship that I had with the people I was working with. So I was being changed, and I don't think I was aware of it as it was happening, but every time that something would happen, the next thing would happen, I understood that what I was carrying forward now was different, and I was different. My understanding was different. My ability to empathize with people was different. My ability to understand and care about people was better, right? I was becoming a better human being from doing this work. Listening to Sister Judy Vaughan and the delight in her voice at telling these stories was just brilliant. She had decades of experience, where I have just 1 decade. She had decades of experience doing this work, and stories that she brought back in a family that she had built out of people she knew. She talked about family is not DNA, family is community, right? She talked about community as a healing force. And this is something that I have known from my own experience, and I love every time I hear that. I think community is the most important thing we provide to people. Housing, great, right? Medical care, great. Living wage would be remarkable, right? All of these things would be remarkable if we could give them all in kind, but I don't have the power to do that. What I do have the power to provide is community. And that, I understand, is incredibly powerful. And one of my favorite nonprofits, Orange Sky Laundry, based in Australia, put a metric up on their main page that I took as the metric everywhere else I went after I saw it. This is number of hours of conversation. We talk about putting people in houses. We talk about, KPI, the metrics of actually making the steps toward getting the program completed, toward getting the funding renewed from wherever. The KPI we don't talk about is the amount of time we spend out on the street. That for every person who takes a shower, we've got 15 minutes to an hour before they take that shower that they're with us. And we see them a couple of times a week. And we get to know them, and we get to share our stories, and we get to understand each other, and we build a sense of community. And this became so powerful that when people would get housed, they would come back and volunteer. They would come back and just hang out, because we were their community. Where that trailer was seen as a beacon of hope. And I understood immediately, because of my own experience, as I said, that community was part of the healing process. Another thing she talked about, and this is kind of along what Greg Boyle was talking about, is that love floods your life, and that it's just opening the door to it floods in, and that I don't have great resources, great personal resources to give. I'm one person. I am damaged by many things that have happened in my life. But if I open myself up to the love that has come toward me and let it come through me to other people, it's infinite, right? I know that there is an infinite amount of care. And the way that I've been able to express that when I talk to people about my understanding of bringing people back is that when I look in the face of somebody who I meet on the streets, I have to assume that anything is possible for them, because that's what happened to me. I am not remarkable. I am remarkable in maybe that I'm sitting here talking about it today, but I've watched hundreds of people in the same situation I was in come back and lead rich, wonderful, fulfilling lives. So I have no reason to believe that the person who I saw this morning does not have that exact same opportunity. And my job is to be there, to stand there with them, alongside them, so that when opportunity comes and they have a question or they're ready to take that step forward, they're not alone. So that I can walk forward with them, and I grow and I understand. And we have that relationship together. We build community together. That's how we heal. So when I sat down at the Radical Compassion event, there were 3 panelists, one of whom I knew, Father Greg Boyle, 2 I did not know. And they shared for a little more than an hour their experiences of working on the margins and what that means to us as people. At the end of the event, Sister Suzanne Jabro, who runs Border Compassion, was asked, "Do you have any final words to leave with the crowd?" And she said, "Remember that we do this because of love." And I had one of those aha moments, realizing that I've been doing this because I was mad. I used to do this because I loved it. I started out doing this because I loved it, but something changed. And I made a commitment to myself that I was going to return to the love of doing this work. So all of these experiences have left me with a new wisdom. And this is about shifting the questions that we ask. I no longer am interested in knowing why things don't work. Things don't work in many cases. I understand why they don't work. I know it's not for lack of trying. I know it's not for lack of the goodness of the people who are doing this work. What I want to understand is, how do we make this work for you? When I work with somebody, when I meet somebody, I want to understand, what do you need and how do I bring that to you? How do I help you re-enter the community? How do I invite you into my community? How do I hope that you'll invite me into yours? And I've talked about some of these things before, but one of the most powerful ways that we can look at the reframing of these questions is asset-based as opposed to problem-based therapy or an approach. So the asset-based says, well, Paul wanted to be a lawyer and blah, 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 and, or was going to be a minister or whatever that, but this happened. Somebody is a parent, but this happened. Somebody wants to become a musician, but this happened, right? To look at the asset that somebody is, that they're bringing, their hope. What is their hope? What is the enlivening? What is the light that's inside of them that they carried and that was broken somehow, that ended up with them on the streets? To look at the asset, not to ignore the problem, but to see the human being first and not the problem first. I guess that's the simplest way to say it. See the humanity, see the opportunity, see the potential before we see all of the problems. Then we can reframe how we address those problems, because we have a personal understanding of how what their skills are, where we can build, how we can reframe things that they can understand how to take steps that are terrifying sometimes, right? Really take a lot of personal courage in order to want to change and to take the steps. I've talked before about this simple but not easy. These are simple things to do. They're not easy things to do. They involve destroying your ego in many cases, right? Ego is a problem for a lot of people. So you've got to destroy your ego in order to let a different person become, right? All the things that you have built up around you to protect you from the dangers and all the traumas you've experienced and all of the things that have caused you to become who you are right now. I want to know who you were when you were 9. I want to know who you were when you still had those dreams. And we're going to work toward bringing that person back. So I've talked a little bit about the approach we take toward the people who we serve, who we work with, who are on the streets. And I want to talk now about turning that lens around and using the same approach to all of the people who we work alongside. Burnout in our business is incredibly high. Burnout in all caring industries is incredibly high. And I've quoted some numbers in the article, and it's as high as 80% for some nurses. I know the turnover is at least 65% in some of the agencies here in Los Angeles, because it's an incredible drain on your personal resources. And if you don't have a community surrounding you, a place to talk about what's happening, you can fall apart. I mean, this is brutal work. And we are giving these people, often they're just young, out of college, brilliant, wonderful, amazing human beings, and we're telling them to go and sit in front of somebody and tell them there's no housing. There's no program for you. It's too late. And they have to do this over and over and over. And eventually the trust breaks and they leave that job, and that person that they were serving comes back and it's a new face. And the trust is broken and has to be rebuilt again. It happens over and over and over. It doesn't work for anybody. It's a system that they're underpaid, they're overworked, overstressed. As I said earlier, it's 200 people a day hitting the system. The system cannot withstand this. It cannot endure this. It's why I talk so much about we need a community response. We need to push this back to the neighborhoods, right? We need to engage the faith communities and getting all of us together on a block-by-block basis to meet the needs of our neighbors, housed and unhoused, the whole community, everywhere that we are. So for most of us who do this work, the cost can be very high. Secondary trauma, the witnessing of trauma in others, is a real thing. And it causes people to burn out, causes people to leave this work. So I want to stress to all organizations, and I do this wherever I work, and I do this wherever I talk about the work that I do, that self-care is not selfish. Self-care is necessary. Self-care is the only way we can sustain this battle, because I don't have the resources individually. I just don't, to do what needs to be done. I cannot do this as a single solitary person. I need community around me. I need people to tell me where I'm right, where I'm wrong, to encourage me, to share their troubles with me so that I can empathize with them. And we all need that as part of our own healing. We need to do that for each other. We need to have more ways to do that for each other. It's one of the things that when I first was setting up Second Grace, I talked to a lot of service providers about the needs they have. And one of them was the head of a mental health team. And she said, what my people need is somewhere they can go to talk about what happened today. And she said, kind of like, imagine AA for mental health workers, but not for AA, right? I'm like, yeah, I get the concept. Somewhere where you can go, where it's a group of people who are like you, who are similar, that you share something, that you can go and just talk about what happened. We don't provide enough of that. It's evidenced by the fact that people are burning out all over the place. And it's not something that is seen as desperately necessary. It's nice when we can do it, but it's not the first thing we think about. But if you're an organization who's creating a service group, you need to be able to take care of your service people. And I stress that all the time in the teachings that I do and the talking that I do, that we need to take care of ourselves, take care of the people so that we can continue to go out and do this work. So I want to wrap this up. Some of it will be a recap, some possibly new ideas I haven't talked about before. But I want to start out by saying again, we need to do this in community. I will never get tired of saying this. I'm sorry if it's boring to you, but it is community, community, community. And until we can figure that out, we will not end both current homelessness and we will not be able to prevent people from falling into homelessness. And these radical self-care practices of loving each other, taking care of each other, treating our neighbors as neighbors, regardless of their housing situation. Everyone who is next to me in this community is my neighbor, whether or not they have housing. Neighbors fall on hard times. We surround them with love and support and whatever resources we can muster. So we used to do that better. I've talked about this before. This is something that I think has been lost in my lifetime. I grew up in a town where everybody left their doors open because on a cold winter night, if you needed to get in out of the cold, you needed to have somewhere safe to go. We just did that. That was the norm because it's 30 degrees below zero outside, and if you're trapped, you're not going to live long. So it's simple things like how do we take care of each other? How do we lay down the fear that has been driven into us? We are so driven by fear and anxiety and misunderstanding, and we're being told lies about people. They're trying to divide us, and we can't be divided if we're going to solve these problems, okay? This is my big message. This is what I keep coming back to. So, you know that you can go volunteer places. You can join an online community like Second Grace. I've built an immigration hub out there now, so I invite you to all do that, or you can build movements on your own. I really don't have a hard and fast rule on doing that. You will, along with your neighbors, discover what you need. You will, by asking the people who you're serving, discover what they need, and you'll be able to bring them. And remember that in this work, we are sustained by love. As I said, I'd forgotten this for a little while, and it was tiring to me. I was getting burned out. I was getting short-tempered. And I was just reminded that I do this because I love it. And I invite you to remember that you do this because you love it too. So we're doing this for love, out of love for other people, out of love for other human beings, out of love for our neighbors. And that is an inexhaustible source. That is a source that will bring together unexpected groups of people with unexpected resources at all times of the night or day. I've just seen it happen so many times. And I have to believe that that's just the way this works, right? So we belong to each other. We need to build these stronger neighborhoods. We need to do things like I was given the privilege of seeing these three amazing people talk. Anything that you can to build up, to spend some time enriching your own spiritual life and understanding who you are here, please do it. Please join us in this. We can end homelessness. Absolutely can do this. We need you. I need you. Thank you. So, thank you. I know this was a long one. You can tell I care deeply about this. I'm going to keep coming back to this over and over because I want you to know that we can end homelessness and we can do it together. So, like and subscribe. Check out my Substack. Tell your friends. Pass the articles around. Please comment. Let me know if you think I'm crazy or if you think I'm right. And give me some ideas of things you want to hear me talk about, because I do need a little more information from you in order to give you the inspiration and the conversations that you want to have. Thank you again. See you next week.